Past 7 p.m. Today is, I believe, it's March 27th, 2018. We are about to start our regularly scheduled meeting for the council. At this point of time, I would like to ask Mr. Clerk to please proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Joseph,
Here.
Vice Mayor Keys,
Here.
Councilman Bieneme, Councilman Galvin, Councilman Desiree. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll proceed with Pledge of Allegiance by our own commander, the famous James Mesidor.
If I could ask everyone stand and please place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll ask Pastor Chris Cassis from the Source Church to please lead us in invocation.
Will you bow your heads as I pray? Dear wise and loving Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for the many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself. For the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to make decisions. Thank you for loving us, even so, from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our elected officials, in particular for this assembled council. I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives, and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city. It is in your most blessed name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor. Now we may be seated. At this time, we will entertain any additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda, Mr. Manager.
No changes, sir.
No changes? Meaning the agenda is now set.
Mayor, the agenda is now set. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. The first order in our agenda is a special presentation made to the Epilepsy Foundation. At this time, I'll ask my colleagues to please come down with me and make this presentation. Yeah, this is a proclamation presented to the Epilepsy Foundation of Florida. On behalf of the city residents, the city of North Miami, we are pleased to announce this proclamation to the Epilepsy Foundation of Florida. The CEO of the organization, Ms. Karen Igozi. Oh, that's you? No. Oh, Marisol Valdez. Okay. That's the Colombian coffee or Mexican coffee? The Colombian coffee. She's now in Gainesville, I believe. And Ms. Marisol Valdez, Advancement of Education Manager, will accept the proclamation on behalf of the EFOF. At this time, you can come forward. There are like 12 whereases. I'll probably just read maybe one or two of them. This proclamation from the city of North Miami is presented to the National Purple in honor of National Purple Day. Whereas in 2008, the idea of Purple Day campaign on March 26th of each year was created by Cassidy Megan to get people talking about epilepsy in an effort to dispel myths and inform those with seizures that they are not alone. And whereas the foundation provides many valuable services to individuals and their families, regardless of their financial situation, including support groups, information referrals, prevention education, medical services, psychological services, individualized case management, advocacy, and epilepsy awareness. Now, therefore, in consideration of the foregoing, I, Dr. Smith Joseph, Mayor of this great city of North Miami, City on the Move, on behalf of the entire council and its 60,000 plus residents, we do hereby proclaim May 27th, 2018, to be the Epilepsy Foundation Day of Florida Day. It will be engraved in the archives of the city of North Miami forever.
This is very beautiful. Thank you, Mayor, and the city. Epilepsy is a disease that not many people hear of because not many people talk about it. In our county alone, there's 70,000 people that have epilepsy. It's 1 in 26. So it's a very big problem, health problem that we have. And spreading awareness is our goal, and to help people who suffer from challenges that occur because of epilepsy. We, like the mayor said, we provide medical services, social services, case management, education. We do have a walk coming up on May 5th in Tropical Park in Miami, and in Broward we have it on May 6th in Hollywood Beach Park, North Beach. We thank you for the years of support that we've had from the city, and we thank you for this proclamation. We're very honored, and thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Next item would be announcement by of city events. But before I do that, I would like to acknowledge the presence in our midst of our state representative, Attorney Joe Geller. He's a very good friend of the city of North Miami. Welcome among us.
Good evening, Mayor, Council staff, North Miami neighbors, and guests. My name is Cassandra Timothy, Public Information Officer, and it is my pleasure to share some of our upcoming city events and programs. Councilman Philippe Bien-Aimé and FarmShare will host a community food distribution for families in North Miami on Thursday, March 29th, beginning at 10 a.m. Some of the food that FarmShare provides are fruits, vegetables, bread, and pastries. This event is free and open to the public and will take place at the Griffin Community Center. Bring out the entire family to Enchanted Forest, Elaine Gordon Park this Saturday for the city's annual Spring Egg Hunt. Children ages 12 and under will enjoy activities such as face painting, pony rides, inflatable games, and good old-fashioned egg hunts. On Saturday, March 31st at 10 a.m., there will be animals on site available for adoption. Free parking will be available at Johnson and Wales University on the corner of Northeast 17th Avenue and 127th Street. Reduce stress, control anxiety, and enhance your self-awareness at the North Miami Public Library's newest meditation workshop. On Saturday, March 31st from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., learn the most advanced yet most ancient method of inner meditation at the NOMI Library. Vice Mayor Carol Keys and the Community Development Department will host the second annual Housing Affordability Resource Forum on Monday, April 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. Discussion topics include housing fairness, tenant and home ownership rights, elderly and disabled rights, financial assistance, and housing resources. Share your thoughts and ideas regarding the future of our parks and recreation activities in the city of North Miami on Thursday, April 5th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. The community forum is hosted by the Parks and Recreation Board. Tickets are currently on sale for the Mayor's 2018 Reverse Raffle, supporting POW of North Miami. The reverse raffle will consist of 15 $500 winner and one lucky $10,000 winner. Only 300 tickets will be sold. Purchase your ticket today at $150 online or in the Mayor and Council's office. The winners will be announced at a reception hosted by North Miami Mayor Dr. Smith Joseph on Saturday, April 7th. North Miami residents are slated to cast ballots for the proposed North Miami General Obligation Bond during a special election on Tuesday, May 1st. Early voting will run Thursday, April 26th through Sunday, April 29th. Learn more by visiting www.nomigobond.com. Stay up to date with the latest happening in our city by first visiting www.northmiamifl.gov, then clicking the Connect with NOMI icon on our homepage, where you can sign up to receive our free monthly newsletter and follow us on social media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Timothy. There is no update on city projects.
Not tonight, sir.
Not tonight.
What was the item? I'm sorry.
Nothing. Consent agenda is comprised of, I don't know how many, A through F, items A through F in the consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Quick question. There was one item I wanted to pull from the consent item. That's why I put Mr. Not F. The discussion.
Item F.
Yes, sir.
Let's propose. What is it for again?
Hold on.
To provide governmental affairs services to the city.
Yes.
Governmental affairs. Okay. All right. So you want to ask a few questions
Yeah, I
about
want
it?
to pull it from consent to regular.
That's fine. So we need a motion for items A through E, as in Easter coming up.
Second. Already moved it. So I have a motion made by Councilman Galvin to approve the consent agenda items A through E. That motion was seconded by Councilman Desume. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes with a 5-0 vote. Tab F, proposed resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, authorizing the city manager to renew the contract for professional services between the city of North Miami and KSF and Associates LLC to provide governmental affairs services to the city not to exceed $50,000 and providing for an effective date and for all other purposes.
Staff?
Through the mayor, this item is as it says, authorization for professional services. KSF is a company that in the last legislative session did a great deal of work on behalf of the city. They kind of spearheaded a lot of the FIU interactions during this legislative session. And in speaking with our main lobbyist, they felt it'd be important to add some additional assets to the overall team so that we'd have much more success. So I'm asking for your authorization.
Okay, at this time, we'll allow the public to have the opportunity to be heard. The public hearing is open on item F as in Frank. F as in Frank, it's an item about $50,000 contract that's being proposed between City of North Miami and KS. What does KSF stand for?
That was my
KSF and Associates.
That is the principal's name, Katia St. Flora and Associates.
Okay. Public hearing is open, but I see none, hear none, so public hearing is now closed on the item. You always do that, Miss Agnes. We always do
Yes,
this.
because I'm a little disabled. I can't move as fast as you.
Oh.
Thank you.
But you can.
You have the floor. It's yours.
My name is Jessica Alston, 1140 Northwest 125 Street. I see that this one company is listed here for this contract. But I'm wondering, was anyone else invited to participate in the contract? Was a competitive bidding process? Only one person was invited to bid. That's not clear. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, public hearing is still open on the item F. I see no one coming to the mic. Public hearing again is open. Public hearing is closed. Thank you very much. I will come to the dais. Ms. Vice Mayor?
Okay. Just a question, Mr. Manager. We spoke about this, thank you. Has the bill been passed, or is it still in place, where they tried to eliminate lobbyists from doing appropriations for municipalities?
That I didn't, I know you sent me the communication, I had not followed up on it. I can, I don't know if we have a member of the legislature here.
Maybe
but,
he could answer that.
yeah.
If I may. No bill has passed, but there is a proposal pending that's in the drafting committee of the Constitutional Revision Commission, along with a lot of other controversial items that would prohibit all cities from doing that. It received preliminary approval. It's not gotten final approval, but it's been passed to the drafting committee, and they'll bring it back to the full CRC. If they adopt it, it's related to some other so-called ethics reforms. If that passes in November, it would prohibit the practice going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So this bill has to do with lobbyists can help us with procedural matters, but they cannot help us get money. So I'd like to, this contract is up to $50,000, so if we enter it, that we keep that in mind, that we don't go into a contract that is going to be irrelevant, since we can't get, unless this person is only going to be doing procedural if it passes. So I'd like to just keep that in mind.
I mean, we can put that language in the contract, yeah, and we'd have to do it with all of our existing lobbyists,
Okay.
so.
You want to go? Right,
No,
Councilman.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. How much money do you spend on lobbying in Tallahassee total?
Total, this legislative session, we're approximately about $95,000, somewhere around that range.
To get what?
So this session, we got, we actually achieved a $500,000 grant for the Arch Creek Drainage Project. So that was approved. I think, as you know, we submit a fairly healthy budget submittal, and because of the early session this year, a lot of cities didn't get a lot of things. But from our review and my trips to Tallahassee, our access was great. We were able to meet with the head of appropriations on the Senate side and the House side as a result of the work, the assistance that KSF brought to us. So, and again, seen by our full-time lobbyist, Mr. Book, he suggested that we add this company on.
You add from his contract or
It would add as
additional?
an additional contract.
That's when is it a total of how much? $100,000?
We would go now to, well, we don't, I asked for up to $50,000, but where we'll probably end up is somewhere around 40. I wasn't sure.
For just per session?
No, it would be for the year. So any governmental related things that we need done for the entire year, we would have. So this would be a 12-month contract.
You wanna?
No, go ahead.
I have to jump in and sing sing Katia St. Flora's praises during the recent, and it's still ongoing. The governor has not yet signed the quote-unquote FIU Arch Creek East Preserve bill, but Ms. St. Flora was on the job feeding me live reports from the floor. Like, I was very, very impressed that this young lady, I say young lady because she used to work here in our city council office, that she was as on the money as she was. So to me, this is money well spent, because she showed me in the last 3 to 4 weeks that she's worth every penny we can pay her.
Can I say
Go
something?
ahead, go ahead.
The reason I asked for the item to be pulled, I don't really have any anything either way. I know Ms. Fleur, I didn't even know which the company. So what I would ask administration on something in that level, us as the policymaker, that conversation needs to happen with us and have us meet the person. Because if you ask me to vote on my lobbyist and I don't know who the company is, I know we have two, Mr. Book and Becca Polikoff in DC. That was the problem for me. I think all of this could have been easily avoided, but I don't know who until I think the mayor asks who the company is. There's no backup on the company, whatever the case is. As Councilman Galvin said, I totally would support. I've seen her work and done know what she does in that capacity in Tallahassee as well as locally. But all of this could have been avoided if you are asking us to approve something that we don't know who we hiring. That was my concern. And moving forward next time, please let us, if it's dealing with governmental, at least I could say, this is the person that we have in Tallahassee. This is why we're hiring this person. If there's an issue, let's go after this person. I didn't know that, and that was my only concern. So I don't have any issue with it. But Mr. Manager, next time, appropriately, if you're asking us to hire somebody that's especially dealing with government,
not for the administration.
Yeah.
Not for the
No.
administration. The lobbyist doesn't work for
Yeah,
the administration.
they work for-
with the policy maker. We're
Yeah.
looking for someone
Issues.
to push our agenda or policy in Tallahassee. It's not just for the administration.
and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
So this company would get paid how? What would be the procedure? She will bill.
Typically, it's
As we go?
like with our other lobbyists, we get there's a monthly retainer that gets paid.
A monthly
based on-
retainer and what?
So it would be based
she's-
on the annual amount of the contract.
No, but it says up to 50.
Right.
So it's gonna boil
I asked
down
for-
to
I-
how many hours? How many? Is it a
No. It's just a monthly retainer, and we deploy them as we need them on.
How will
and-
she bill? I mean, what would be her cost?
It's,
It's 40
no.
divided by 12.
It's whatever the total amount of the contract divided by 12. And we use them, like we
Oh,
use
okay.
Mr. Book on a number of issues, not just Tallahassee. We would do the same in this situation as well.
Okay. So at this time, we will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilman Desmond to approve tab F. The motion was second by Councilman Galvin. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item passed with a 5-0 vote. Tab G, proposed resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, approving the execution of a lease agreement in substantially the attached form between 805 Realty LLC as landlord and the city of North Miami as tenant for properties located at 809 and 811 Northeast 125th Street for a term of 3 years, commencing on or about April 1st, 2018, until March 2021, in the initial year base pay amount of $62,019.96, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to continue this item to the next city council agenda. The contract was just handed to the city council as this item was being introduced. In fairness to everybody involved,
No,
I move to
that's
continue.
that's
this.
fine. We just literally found out that it wasn't replicated when I gave my packet in.
Okay.
So that's fine. We'll bring it to the
I
next
move to
meeting.
continue this until the first meeting in April.
We need a second?
Second.
Okay.
So I have a motion made by Councilman Galvin to continue this item. That motion was seconded by Councilman Desume, and that was a motion to continue this item. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes with a 5-0 vote. Tab H, proposed ordinance, first reading, of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending Chapter 6 of the North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Elections by amending Article 4 entitled Election Administration, specifically at Section 6-78, entitled Election of the City Council Members, providing for repeal, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for a codification, and for an effective date.
Thank you very much. Mr. Attorney, do you want to clarify anything on that?
Sure, Mayor. Thank you so much. So this ordinance arises from a conversation I had with Councilman Bieneme. We were discussing the requirements for qualifying for the elections. He had some changes he requested. Some of them we were able to decided weren't appropriate at this time. However, in doing the review, we realized that there was a conflict between our charter and the code. Essentially, the charter requires that you have, in order to show residency, a governmental ID plus one other identification. Our code actually just said there was an affidavit you had to file, and then it just said 2 other forms of ID. It did not specifically state governmental ID. So we added that language to the code to match the charter. In addition, there was an issue of whether leases were appropriate or not. We had a conversation regarding that. I respectfully requested that the lease agreements remain in the code. I thought that just for individuals who were renters, it would be unfair to remove that requirement. But to tighten it up, we did add some language, and it's your discretion whether you keep it or not. That would make subleases unacceptable as a form of proof of residency, and that's really up for your discussion. And the item is sponsored by Councilman Bieneme, so I don't know if he has any statements he wants to make.
No, you're all clear on that.
All right. At this time, we'll open it to the public for comment, concerns, questions. Item, is it G? H, as in hat. I see no one coming. Hear no one.
Jessica Alston, 1140 Northwest 125 Street, Sunkist Grove. Currently, Section 678 states that any persons seeking office of mayor or council must be a resident of the city and respective district of North Miami for at least 1 year prior to qualifying for this office. I stand to say that I would like to see this remain. I am opposed to any change in allowing anyone who does not live in the city to sit in an office in serving in the city, a councilman, a member, or whatever. I am opposed to this. There's a rumor now that there's someone sitting who's not a current resident of the city and therefore has committed perjury. But I will not address that. I stand to say I do not support, and there are others who do not support, someone who is not a resident of the city serving in any official capacity in the city of North Miami. Thank you.
Going forward, I am asking you to please refrain from applauding. This is not a show. This is not the Apollo. This is the city council meeting. And this is the last I'm saying that. Okay, if we continue to be a circus attendant, you will be thrown out. The item H is still open for public hearing.
My name is Jessica Martinez. I live in Northeast 127 and 9 Avenue. I've been a resident of North Miami for 14 years, and I strictly support her opinion. I didn't know what Section 678 was, and thank you for the clarification.
Mayor, before we have a bunch of people coming up here, could I please?
That's why I had you speak first.
I need a clarification.
Okay.
If it's that true, I'm strictly opposed that. So if it's that true, I want to make sure it's clarification because that concerns me. I want to make sure if I vote somebody, they live in our city.
This is to strengthen.
No change at all to the length of time someone must live in the city to be a candidate for any office. That's
But-
not the change that was made.
But thank you for the clarification for our residents, because I was concerned when I heard what she said. So thank you very much. If you clarified that, it will be okay.
In my opinion, this makes it actually harder for somebody to get on the ballot.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
strengthening the laws that we have in place. The biggest change is that we're not allowing somebody to show a sublease. It's one thing if you lease an apartment, but if you then sublease to somebody in the back room of your house, we'll no longer accept that as a qualifying document.
Public hearing is still open, but I see no one coming. Public hearing is now closed. Members of the dais, we are now free to speak.
Mr. Mayor, I concur with Councilman Galvin. This actually strengthened the current code that we have. And any time we could make it a little bit stronger, it will always be my, that would be my thing. So since we're on the topic, how can we, Mr. Attorney, what other strengthening can we do to make sure that, because it's always an issue that folks who doesn't live here come in and run here legally.
Well, again, the charter already speaks to what the residency requirements are. So, for example, we couldn't change 1 year to 2 years. That wouldn't be allowable because the charter says 1 year. And really, I was actually surprised to see that we even had any discussion outside the charter on residency, since the charter already speaks on it. I think we've made it a little bit stricter because we've explained what specific documents will qualify as those documents, but I don't know that we can go any further than that because the charter
Okay.
already
Oh, it's
states what
in
the
the
charter says.
municipal.
It's in the charter.
Okay.
Charter,
It's in the charter. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments?
No.
All right, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
No, it's roll call. No.
It's an ordinance.
So, move approval.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilman Galvin to approve tab H, and that motion was seconded by Councilman Desiree.
Bien-aimé, I remember.
I'm sorry, it was seconded by Councilman Bien-Aimé. So the motion was made by Councilman Galvin, approved second by Councilman Bien-Aimé. Roll call vote. Councilwoman Keys, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilman Bien-Aimé?
Yes.
Councilman Desiree?
Yes.
Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Councilman Galvin?
Yes.
Item passes with a 5-0 vote. Tab I, proposed resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida. Ms. Quasi.
Do people have to, it's a quasi
You want
judicial.
me to read it first or there? Okay, so apparently this particular item, tab I, is a quasi INJ.
Mhm.
So tabs I and J, so we're going to attack tab I now. So tab I is, in fact, a quasi-judicial matter. So if anyone wants to be heard on this particular item, you will have to stand up and take an oath. And once I administer the oath, upon the mayor opening the public comments, you'll be able to speak. But if you do not take the oath, you will not be allowed to speak on
Hold
this
on one
particular
second.
item. And
Hold
this
on.
is tab I. So Mayor, you can take notice of all the residents
hold
who
on.
are standing up. So for those of you who are in fact standing and
If
wish
you want to talk in the 130th apartment, you got to stand up right now.
So everyone who want to be heard on this particular item, tab I, please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. Answer my question. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God? Okay, Mayor, all the individuals who in fact stood up have been duly sworn in to speak on tab I.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may sit down. Now I'm going to read.
So, Mayor, since we had some issues the last time, I'm going to read a couple of things into the record so we know what the procedures are going forward on this and the following item. So please note that only competent, substantial, fact-based testimony or evidence will be considered by the board in deciding the quasi-judicial matters listed on today's agenda. Pure speculation or opinion not based on competent facts cannot be legally considered by the board in weighing the appropriateness of the application. If you intend to comment or provide evidence or testimony on an item marked with, testimony on this item, please keep this in mind. Finally, before addressing the board, in order to keep the public record accurate, you must state your name and state your address and whether or not, you've been sworn when you approach the podium to speak on the quasi-judicial matter. The order of this presentation will be, once the clerk's read the item into the record, There'll be a moment for anyone to disclose any ex parte communications or personal investigations that were taken on this item. There'll be a presentation by city staff, presentation by the applicant, and then public comment. During that public comment, I've had one individual approach me, that's Mr. Tucker Gibbs. He represents an affected party in the area. I ask, as we did last time, that individual be given a little bit more time than others. He's asked for, I believe, 10 minutes for himself and 10 minutes for his client. After that, there's cross-examination, if necessary, by the city staff, cross-examination by the applicant, if necessary, cross-examination by the decision-making body, which is yourself, and then rebuttal by the applicant, and then the closing of the public hearing. Then there's a discussion among the members of the decision-making body, which is yourself, and then a motion, and then whatever action you all take. This comes out of section 3-303 of the quasi-judicial procedures in our code. So it's already spelled out in our code how we would proceed. I believe that's everything, and the code and the clerk may proceed.
Is it okay if I commence to read tab I, Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Tab I, proposed.
I'm sorry, but I don't, one other part of this procedure, which sometimes we do, if we had met with the applicant, we have to.
Right after he reads.
Right after the reading. Go ahead.
Tab I, proposed resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, approving an application for a conditional use permit in substantially the attached form, allocating 62 residential units from the primary pool of 2,500 floating residential units reserved for the neighborhood redevelopment overlay (NRO) district for a proposed 6-story, 67-unit multifamily residential development on the 1.1 acre real property generally located at 840 Northeast 130th Street, and specifically identified with Miami-Dade County folio number 06-2230-013-0110. In accordance with Article 4, Division 4, Section 4-205B, and Section 4-305, and Article 3, Division 4, Sections 3-402 through 3-407 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances, Chapter 29, entitled Land Development Regulations, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes.
Thank you very much. So, before staff, we have to do it.
This would be the appropriate time for anyone who's had any conversations that they would want to disclose at this point.
Okay. Well, I want to disclose that I had the opportunity to meet, I think, twice. This item was presented, this project was presented to me here in this on second floor, and subsequently, at my medical office, I allowed the attorney Joe Geller to have the team do a follow-up meeting so that they could tell me a little bit more about this project.
I want to say on record that I met with the developer and Mr. Geller about the project, and we discussed about it for about an hour, and that was it.
I have met with the applicant and their attorney, Mr. Geller. I've met in person. I've had maybe one, possibly two conversations additionally with the attorney, and I've had several conversations with members of the neighborhood. I don't think I have to give everybody's name.
Mr. Mayor, I'll put on the record that I have had coffee with the applicant, paid for my own coffee, and also had side conversations with their attorney, Mr. Geller, as well as receiving emails from several residents in the community with concern.
Was it Colombian coffee or Folgers?
It was Cafe Creme, so whatever they serve.
Well, on the record, I have met with the attorney and I guess along with the developer, I did have water, so I didn't have to pay for anything, and it was about 35 minutes, and that was once for about maybe 2 months ago, or a month ago. Thank you.
All right, Séjour.
Thank you. For the record, Tanya Wilson Séjour with Community Planning and Development Department. The applicant before you is Oz and BF LLC, and we have a request for a conditional use permit in accordance with section 4-305 and 3-407 of the city's LDRs. I'm going to walk you through an overview of the current request, outline the criteria from the city's land development regulations for how applications need to meet the code in terms of conditional use permit approval, and then finally the next steps if this item is approved as a resolution tonight, what happens next once the conditional use permit is issued. The request before you is for 62 dwelling units from the city's neighborhood redevelopment overlay district, and that's a pool of bonus units that was set aside in the code since 2007. The subject site itself is located at 840 Northeast 130th Street. It's currently zoned R2, and that's a single-family zoning district with a land use designation of low-density residential. The site itself is vacant and consists of 1.1 acre in size. Just to provide some background information, because the site is zoned R2, as of right, it allows 5 dwelling units on site currently. And because it's located within the neighborhood redevelopment overlay district, they have the opportunity to approach the council and request at the council's discretion an allocation of 62 additional units that would make it a total development of 67 units on the site. The pool itself, since 2007, has had 2,500 units, so this would be the first allocation within the limits of the NRO, if approved tonight. So looking at the proposal itself, as proposed, it would be a 6-story LEED building, and that's the sustainable certification of LEED. So 67 units are proposed as market rate units, condominium, so that's for ownership. The unit size itself, it's comprised of both 1 and 2 bedroom units. The 1 bedroom would be approximately 757 square feet in size, the 2 bedroom 1,024 square feet in size. The architectural style is contemporary. It's proposed to have lush landscaping around the perimeters of the property itself. And in addition to that, in terms of improvements, the applicant is proposing a 10-foot wide sidewalk on 3 sides of the property. And there's also public art that's being proposed as a part of the development. Looking at the criteria from the code, the land development regulations in section 4-305 has specific objectives that must be met by any applicant that's applying for conditional use permits. The first of which is that it must be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. It also has to have consistency with the R2 zoning district. Must be consistent with all of development standards in the land development regulations. In terms of the street width and pavement, it must have adequate width and pavement to be able to carry the traffic that's anticipated to be generated from this development. Must be compatible with the adjacent uses within the neighborhood. And the parcel, the land itself must have the appropriate size and shape to accommodate proposed development. In terms of the impact to the neighborhood itself, it must show that it doesn't have any adverse impacts to the livability, the value, and development of adjacent properties, and not be detrimental to the public health, safety, general welfare. In terms of design, the design itself, as proposed, must show that it enhances the community character of the surrounding neighborhood. And in terms of the flexibility from the standards itself, as I mentioned, the underlying zoning is R2, but the flexibility that the code provides is that there's an overlay district that will allow bonus densities up to 90 dwelling units per acre. And if proposed, it must show that it would justify having this flexibility applied to the development. And the last of the criteria would be in terms of violations. Anyone applying must not have any open code violations or code enforcement fines against it. So in looking at the merits of what's required, staff believes that this application meets the criteria as outlined in the code, and as such, staff is recommending approval of the allocation of the bonus units at this time. In terms of prior approvals, the application was heard by the Planning Commission and received a vote of 3-1. In terms of the next steps, any application for bonus allocation is strictly just that. It's only units that are allocated. At the next stage, the applicant would be required to submit a full site plan, a detailed, precise plan before the Development Review Committee, where it will be reviewed by Public Works, Police, Miami-Dade Fire, Miami-Dade County Fire will be looking at it as well, Any other county agencies such as Durham would also have a requirement to look at that review at the DRC stage. And then if issued and approved for the conditional use permit, it is only good for 12 months. The applicant would then need to move forward and pull building permits within the next 12 months if approved at this stage. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant. Applicant also has a presentation on the project at this time.
If I may proceed, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and I'm Joseph Geller of Greenspoon Martyr. I'm the attorney for the applicant. With me tonight are the architect, Patrick Valent, and owner's representative, Jamie Akbas, and our traffic engineer. This is a preliminary stage that we're here on. We understand clearly that if you approve what's before you, that we still have to meet with DRC. We've had extensive discussions with staff. We understand that that is not a gimme, that there are a lot of conditions and requirements that we need to meet, and that we're subject not only to the review by staff, but we must come back in front of you to have our final site plan approved. What we're here tonight on is just the conditional use, which goes with the neighborhood redevelopment overlay, and this pool of 62 bonus units for a total of 67. So I'll try to move a little quickly. I don't want to be repetitive, but there's a lot of misinformation that's gone around about this project, and I would like to clear some of that up. This is a market rate condominium. It's not rental, it's not workforce, and people throw out the word Section 8. I support affordable housing. I mean, personally, I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think, you know, everyone needs a good place and a decent, safe place to live. But that is not this project. I said, nothing wrong with that, but that is not what's here. These are market rate condominiums, first class. They're something that is frankly sorely lacking in the city. They're not overpriced. The final pricing still to be determined, but we're talking at least in the probably $250,000 range, the owners hope, and maybe a little more than that. That's not out of the reach of people, but it's certainly, those are very nice condominium units. So this is ownership. As you heard, the neighborhood redevelopment overlay permits 90 bonus units an acre. We're 1.1 acres. We would be well within our rights and your code to be here asking for 99 bonus units, again, based on 1.1 acres, and the 5 that go as of right. So we could be seeking a 104 unit project within the terms of your code. And we could be going up approximately 9 or 10 stories. We are not. The owners of this property, who by the way only bought it less than a year ago, I believe, based on what your code says. They read your code, they talked to your staff to make sure they read it correctly, and they decided to move forward with this, but they made a conscious decision not to try to squeeze as much as possible into this site. In fact, they're only looking for really less than 2/3 of the density. We have plans that we can show you. They're preliminary plans, and we'll get to those in just a moment. The architect will present those. But I want to be clear, we have to get through DRC. We're really doing much more than most people do at this stage by showing you detailed drawings and proposed plans. We've met repeatedly with staff so you can see where we're going with this. But you haven't, and we're not asking you to approve this. We have to come back and seek your approval. This is in the neighborhood redevelopment overlay. That's not a brand new thing. As you've heard, it's over 10 years old. You should ask yourself why you've had this on the books for 10 years and no one has made use of it before. I mean, your neighborhood redevelopment overlay was hardly a mistake. It was a forward-looking, visionary plan by some of you and some predecessors to bring this city fully into the 21st century, to look towards sustainability, to look towards things that make sense environmentally for all of our futures. This is half a block off Dixie Highway. It's right on a transit corridor where all reasonable planners are saying development should be directed. Now, we comply with everything in your code. This seeks no variances. We will be seeking no variances. I'm going to focus for a moment on the issue of parking, although the architect will explain that. This is what the parking we have is what your code says we're supposed to have. It starts at 1.5 units, parking spaces per unit. There are a few things in your code that say there can be a bonus that's earned for a reduction in parking. An example is that it's half a block from mass transit. Maybe there needs to be better mass transit, but any good planner will tell you the way you get mass transit is by having some density so people are there to make use of mass transit. It includes bike racks. Some people, if they're working in the city, should have the option, as we spend money on bike paths and bike trails, to be able to get around by using bicycles. It is a LEED certified green building, and there is some bonus associated with that, as there is for having charging stations for non-internal combustion kind of cars, for electric vehicles and things like that. These bonuses are what your code calls for. We've tried to meet everything in the code and to earn some of these bonuses. Because in today's environment, some people don't even have cars. They not only may rely, for instance, on buses, a lot of people today are using ride sharing. And there's nothing in your code, by the way, that particularly acknowledges that, but it is a fact, especially for someone who works in the city of North Miami. And that's principally who we're trying to accommodate. So as you'll hear, we meet the standards for number of parking spaces that are called for in your code. Some people say, oh, you should have more. It was our belief, and we've had even some very recent discussions. There's some discussion about a method that we had called tandem spaces, which are perfectly fine for the two inhabitants of a building. If it's some kind of a couple and they're in a unit, to arrange to have tandem, it's perfectly reasonable. In discussions with your staff, they don't love that. And they've suggested to us that instead we substitute what are called lifts, and the architect will show you some of those lifts, something, by the way, we're perfectly amenable to. We started with 89 spaces. We had been told that that was what was required. Staff has recalculated based on, just very recently, in fact, based on their belief that tandem would not be the best use of spaces. Again, lifts would replace that. But we moved it up ourselves at the last presentation before Planning Commission to 96 spaces, which is more than what the code would require, regardless of how you interpret it. I'll tell you tonight, and you'll see a sketch, it's a proposed plan. Our architect, and he'll explain how, has redesigned it further and has found, by moving columns and realigning and putting some things on the second floor, electrical vaults, has found 10 more parking spaces that would bring that 96 to 106, subject, of course, to our calculation that there will be either some tandem or what your staff says they would rather see and we're amenable to, or some lifts if necessary. In addition to that, there's been some conversation that there might be people parking on the swale in the neighborhood, that's a bad thing, although it probably occurs even under the current set of circumstances, although the fact that this lot is completely empty at this time, which it won't stay, whether it's our project or something else. I mean, if ours ends up not going forward, somebody will probably end up owning this, not us, and they'll build 104 units, and they'll build it 9 or 10 stories tall. But again, there's been some conversation, well, there might be parking on people's swales. And someone associated with the city suggested to me, well, if there's going to be parking on swales, can they park on the swale of your property? And I thought that was a brilliant idea on the part of the person who suggested it to me. And so we've taken a look, and we're here today. We can still continue with the very lush landscaping that you'll see in a moment, but we're also able to incorporate some very attractive decorative pavers that are pervious onto our own swale. And actually, by doing that, there could be, in addition to the parking we have inside our wall, it's a gated facility, and it, again, no parking variance. We will at least meet, we're certain we will exceed what's required, but by changing our landscaping a little bit and opening up our own swale, we can fit 7 more places for people to park on 130th Street and at least 3, we believe, on 9th Avenue. So there's another 10 overflow places. We're not counting those. We're not saying those are our parking. We're not asking that to count in any way towards meeting our obligations and our requirements, but the suggestion was made. It's a good one. And if somebody needs to run up and they're looking and there's not a quick space available to them, we're providing, let them park on our swale and not any of the homeowners, because we've heard what the homeowners have said. And members of the City Council, I'm here to tell you we are doing our level best to make these homeowners, if not love this project, at least have less of an objection to it. We're doing our best, and we will continue to do so. This process doesn't end because you give us bonus units. We have to come back and still go through that. But there's 10 more spaces that people can park and not park on anybody else's swale, which are, by the way, after all, public and not private property. We also, just to be clear, when we count the spaces that we've got, we're including spaces for handicapped, or differently abled, as I would prefer to say, but that's not what the law calls it, and we're including the required guest parking in our requirement, and we are meeting or exceeding that on our property 100%. There's also a very large area in front. It's a drop-off, it's a plaza, and that's where, because people keep saying, well, what if there's some delivery vehicle? That's a place where the postman can put his vehicle, where FedEx or UPS can come and do drop-off, where people can drop off and pick up, where, by the way, taxis or ride-sharing can pull up, not be on the street, not be on anybody's property. There's a very large area there. On everything that this code calls for, we've made it our business to meet it. I should point out to you, understand if you live across the street, maybe you didn't see this coming. And maybe it's something that you would rather not happen. And I feel for someone in that circumstance. Honestly, I do. But the law that you've adopted is not new. It's been there for a decade. It is designed to move this city forward. It's called redevelopment, God bless you, because the city requires some. I don't know personally how old that housing stock is, but I'm sure it's at least 50 and maybe it's 60 or 75 years old. Things have a useful life, even though I know from having driven the neighborhood, these are very well-maintained homes, and the people who own them they haven't done anything wrong. But as I understand your code, once we build up to our property, the people around us are also permitted, although it's called single family, by right, they can go 3 stories. That's why it's considered transitional. They can, under the present circumstances, they're permitted to go up to 3 stories now. And if they sold those properties to townhome developers or something, I think they would all, nobody wants to move, I get that, but financially, none of them are going to be harmed. In fact,
Mr. Geller, are there any key points that you would like to make?
Mayor, I'm going to let the architect talk. Give me 1 more minute and I will wrap up my portion.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that you have a long agenda, so thank you, point taken. But let me just say that since the properties around us are also part of the NRO, these people that are neighbors could be selling for the next NRO development once there's one. And frankly, it may turn out between the church property next to us, which could also, if they sold it, go very high and be very dense, and between the fact that these other properties could also sell to NRO, this property at 6 stories may well end up the shortest property in that portion of the NRO and the least dense. So with that said, and in view of the time involved, I'd like to turn it over to Patrick Valent, the architect, and then at the conclusion of that, we'll be happy to answer any questions. And thank you for your attention.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to suggest that we limit Mr. Valent to 2 minutes, as we would everybody else who's going to come after. If Mr. Valent takes more than 2 minutes, I'd like to suggest that everybody in the room tonight be allowed to speak for as long as Mr. Valent speaks. It's only fair, in my opinion.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Valent, Valent Architect.
One moment. Okay. Councilman, the only difference between him and everyone else is he's actually the applicant, and our code allows him to give a presentation. So I would say keep the presentation brief, but I would recommend not limiting him to 2 minutes because he is the applicant.
Okay. I'll take attorney's advice. Mr. Valent?
I'll keep,
As long
I
as you-
just promise you, let me just finish my introduction real quick. Patrick Valent, Valent Architect, 7480 Fairway Drive, Suite 206. I promise we'll keep it very short. I don't know if it'll be 2 minutes, maybe a hair over that. But Mr. Geller already addressed most of the comments, and this is not a site plan approval, so I'm not going to drill into a lot of details. I just wanted to just point out a few things. We went to the initial commission meeting. We have met with the neighborhood, I would say 3 months ago. I don't know the exact date. We had gone to another commission meeting, and the one thing we did over and over again is we listened. I like to think I listened. We've met with neighbors, we've met with staff at least 10 times, probably more than that, and we get it. We understand some of the key points here. We're not here to address every single detail, but I did want to point out a few things that we heard, and I do want to point out a few of the ways that we plan on addressing them. We're not going to drill into that level of detail, but starting with the parking. So Mr. Geller mentioned that we've been working with staff on the parking count. And we understand there is some heartburn and some concerns about the tandem parking, and we understand that. To be perfectly honest with you, the developer and the owner don't really like tandem parking either. So one of the things we've done, I don't know if you'll be able to hear me.
Yeah, we'll need you to be on the microphone.
You need to stay on the mic. Somebody can move it for you.
Okay, well, if you're yeah. Okay, so one of the things we've done is we went ahead and looked at the building itself and the layout of the building. By reshaping and relooking at the lobby area, we were able to. Oh. Hello. were able to find at least 10 more parking spaces in the front area here. But we didn't stop there. We continued to look at the areas that were going to be tandem, looking at alternatives to that. So we're actually looked at the structure of the building to try to pick up more spacing. I'm not going to get into all the details of how we looked at the beams and the columns, but simply to say that we're already looking at that and trying to find a way to replace the need, the 100% need for tandem with useful parking within our space, and we've done that. So with the exception of possibly one or two lifts, which we still don't think we need, we have found a way to eliminate the tandem. Now, we still may need to get them for the owner's sake, but as far as the parking count, we understand, we heard the need, we had the concerns from staff, and we don't feel we need that to comply. We've already talked to staff about that. So the one thing is the tandem that will allow us to create more of a buffer on the west side and address the landscaping. So by solving one problem, we solve another, the buffer and the landscaping. So the other thing we did to take a look at this is we also looked at, as Mr. Geller mentioned, the swale area. We were heavily landscaped in the front, but by taking this tandem out of here, we can shift some of that landscaping that we have to the west into the south side here. That will allow us to buffer more of the neighborhood with some heavy, dense oak trees, palm trees, native vegetation, and allow us to open that swale area, that sidewalk area, to possibly favors for drop-off and cars to park on. So by solving one problem, we solve another problem. So the other thing we did, we took a look at how the circulation works here. So there's a lot of concerns about dropping off, FedEx, delivery, etc. We heard that, we listened to that. We shifted the height of the building so that most of the clear areas are on the west side here. So that won't be in the front here, or in the drop-off area, or in the elevator lobby. This is where the pool area is. All the drop-off and high areas are here. The garbage and dumps, even though we're not in site plan approval, we're not ready to draw into that detail, but again, listening to the neighbors. They don't want to have these horrible trucks and vehicles in front. We moved all the drop-off and the trash removals inside the building. So again, you're trying to keep all of the functions of the building within the building. So with that said, the other thing that we looked at heavily was how we're buffering against the neighbors. So there was a lot of conversations in the last meetings and with the commission and with the homeowners and with a lot of the staff on how we're going to buffer both the west side and the south side. The current plan was to put a wall, possibly an organic wall with some vegetation, some vines on it, but it just didn't seem like enough. We weren't happy with that. The commission had asked us if we would look at possibly vegetating and landscaping the other side, the south side, the neighbor's side of the wall. So as you can see from this diagram, we're looking at an option where we would put the wall, push it in towards the property, 6 to 7 feet. So in a sense, what that would do is that would allow the neighbors to feel like the landscaping or the grass side of it was more on their property. So if you look here, the landscaping is still there.
30 more seconds.
Okay, but the landscaping is on the neighborhood side of the property. We've already also we've met with staff as far as the tree mitigations. We brought approximately 12 trees that we need to mitigate. We would hope to be able to donate those to the neighborhood and hopefully enhance the front of the building as well. So in summary here, we tried our best to listen to what everyone had to say. We've tried to meet with landscaping. We tried to look at the setbacks of the building. Our building itself, and I'll make this 5 seconds. The building itself only is required to have a 25-foot setback, which you can see right there. We're setting it back from the neighborhood 55 feet, more than double what it's required. There was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of discussion of why we weren't doing structured parking. The structured parking would require that building to be right at the setback. We didn't want to do that. We wanted all of the building to be on the street.
Okay, thank you very much. Where do we go now? Public, okay. Okay, at this point, we'll open the item for public comment, questions, concerns. Anyone who wishes to, anyone who had sworn before the reading of the item can now.
Mr. Mayor, a lot of people came in late, just in case. We may want to announce that they can't speak because they already.
If they weren't there, then yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Just need a second to set up, if I might.
Oh, he's the opposing?
Yes.
Okay, so, Mr. Attorney, now you said the opposing side is allowed the same amount of time that the, no?
He's not. What he asked for was, actually he asked
Well, we
for more.
bo-
I told him I would ask you to give him 10 minutes and his client 10 minutes.
10:10 again?
Yeah.
It won't be that long.